Okay, hello everybody. It's Ed Rosenberg again, and this morning, at least in New York, it's the morning. I am speaking to Angelos and James from Avask. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
We're very well, thanks.
Okay, thank you for coming on, and we're going to be talking about, of course, VAT, which has been very much in the news lately. It's a serious topic. It affects a lot of very large sellers, and there's a lot of money at stake. So we're going to jump right into it. Tax investigations, compliance checks. Why now?
Why now is because HMRC basically have to do something about it. They've had a lot of bad press over the past few years about the amount of VAT that's gone essentially uncollected by non-compliant sellers, especially in the e-commerce world. That bad press and pressure just mounted, and in September 16 they created the online selling compliance team, and that team is just basically it consists of people, the staff there cracking down on Amazon sellers, and essentially their goal is to investigate every Amazon account they can, and bring the non-compliant people to justice, and just do a general sweep of everyone to check.
Right now, the information what they're getting from Amazon, like how does Amazon feel? Is Amazon sort of kicking and screaming and trying to say that it's not our problem? Or is Amazon with them and they're going to assist them with all the possible information what they need to check if you're compliant?
Yeah, Amazon will cooperate fully with HMRC. Legislation was released that basically said the marketplace provider can be held liable for the seller's VAT. So obviously Amazon don't want to be liable for all the VAT of the non-compliant sellers. So Amazon are essentially saying to HMRC they can have access to any information they want. They've got a free range of whatever. So they're going to be very, very cooperative over this.
Right, yeah, and especially there's an article today about it. So yeah, what do you want to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that because of the regulation that came into force like in September 16, so the joint liability basically it traced out what it was actually originally the idea of making sure that the online sellers they pay all the VAT. And it was back in December 12 that originally started as you call yourself for the first dollar, but that came into force just because there wasn't, I would say, not that much enforcement in place. So now they're really serious, and marketplace they have to collaborate.
Right. Now, is there any kind of methodology that they're choosing? They obviously can't check everyone in one shot. So my assumption would be that they would start from the top and take the largest sellers. But it doesn't seem that they're doing that. Do you have any idea why the randomness, or is it really random? Who's they going to crack down on first?
Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen so far, there's no structure to the way they're going for people. They don't seem to have a list of top sellers to the bottom. They're very random in their approach. We've spoken to people from HMRC regarding it, and this is very much a long-term project. And there's no sort of, like I said, no structure. They just want to get through everyone.
Right. So they're going.
In terms of also. Just to give you a bit of an example, we had cases whereby sellers had to pay, I would say, some few millions because they had a significant amount of sales. But we also had cases whereby they only made a few hundreds of pounds. So you can see that the scale is so large, and it shows that there is no actually a list or anything like that. I would say that it is more of a random and more I would say, targeted to the e-commerce side of things, just because there's a large amount of funds that have not been collected so far for VAT.
Are they going after U.S. sellers more aggressively, or does it make a difference if you're from Canada or from the United States? They're going after everyone equally.
Yeah, they're not targeting anyone over anyone. It's across the board. Yeah, there's no targeting going on at all.
Yeah, and just to add on this one, it doesn't matter if you are from China as well or from Japan, Singapore, because we have clients all over the world, and there are investigations on all accounts. And just one thing that I forgot to mention is the reason for the whole non-compliance and this action that has been taking place is because there is a website called vatfraud.org, whereby all the companies that are not having a VAT number in the UK, or if those that they do not comply with HMRC, it is a list of, it is very skill that wanted to put together a list of sellers that they don't comply. So because of pressure to the government, and because of they have a kind of a non-compliance meter there, so it says to you like how much money has not been collected and how many sellers have not been chased up. So because of this pressure from the society, the HMRC had to do this, and you're going to see there Chinese sellers, US sellers, like from all across the world.
Yeah, and I am familiar with that site. Okay, so I just want to walk through. Like, I have sellers that have gotten bills from HMRC for millions of dollars, because if you're doing $10 million a year in the UK since 2015, that's 25 million. 20% of that, that's a lot of money. Now, they're not going to just write a check to HMRC. I would imagine most people are going to explore their options. So what happens then? HMRC sends you an invoice, and the seller doesn't sell. And I know they're not going to be able to sell on Amazon again, but many sellers are simply going to open up a new corporation, and they're going to get a new VAT account under that. What happens to the old liability of $5 million? Can the IRS come after you? Can HMRC arrest you if you land in the UK? Like, what's the process? I'm not familiar at all.
I think all the questions that you raised right now, these are all the questions that we received from the sellers over the phone and over emails. I would just, if you allow me, James, just to give kind of a, how to say it, a bit of a process like on the response is, what happens is when HMRC contacts someone that has been selling on Amazon, it means that there is some kind of a hint or a suspicion that there is some kind of non-compliance. That's why HMRC wants to send out the letter. In some cases, the account may be closed already. In some other cases, the account may be still open, but the HMRC tells you, I want a VAT number first, and declare for me all the sales that you made. Basically, what HMRC wants to know is the exact starting date of your first sale that you made in the UK. This is a key point, just because if the starting date is incorrect, or it was concealed for a certain reason, or it was, as they call it, prompted concealment, then the penalties go up to 100% of the VAT that is owed. So you can understand that that's what we say to the client, that it is, since you didn't know, for example, or you didn't want to disclose, at least now that you have come at this point whereby you want to come on a clean break with the government, just to say the correct date so that you can avoid the penalties, because the penalties are those that are killing the whole amount of VAT that is owed. And as you can appreciate, because HMRC wants to communicate via email, everything is written down, so that's why it's good to have a tax advisor whereby we can discuss and we can explain to you what are the options. I mean, there are some cases whereby we can bring down the VAT to a certain extent, but the best thing to do is to collaborate with us, because the tax advisors are here to help. We're not part of the HMRC. We're independent agents. I mean, we collect the, as you like, if you like, the sale, the VAT. We declare the sales, but we're not here to. We're not actually, extended arm of HMRC. Of course, we want to facilitate and we want to be in the middle. But my point is that if sales are disclosed properly and if the correct information is given on the questionnaire that HMRC gives, then the only thing that remains is to pay the VAT, avoid the penalties so that the account is open and the sellers can enjoy the benefits of having their account, having the reviews, and not having to redo listings, restart reviews, and building a brand which they would have lost if the account was shut, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but it's one thing not getting your account open. What? Is it unknown at this point what reach they have? Because I don't think HMRC is just going to fold up if they owe $5 million. If a seller owes $5 million, they're going to try to get that. But I don't think, on the other hand, especially if the seller doesn't have, like if the seller declares bankruptcy, like what's the process? Because in the United States, if the IRS comes after you, and they're going to come after you all the way. Is it the same with the HMRC? Do they work with the IRS, or the HMRC an independent then?
I mean, yeah, the HMRC are obviously monitoring the UK first and foremost. But if for example, if there was a liability owed for $5 million, then if the amount is significant enough, then there's nothing to say that HMRC wouldn't work with the IRS to try and pursue that. Obviously, the two governments are very close, so. We haven't personally seen cases where HMRC have got on planes to the US to go and chase these people down. But like I said, you can't write this thing off. The team is still very new and they're still exploring their options. So if the money is that significant, then they're not just going to go. They're going to take other means of action to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. Okay, so the amount is essentially 20%. Now, in a restaurant business or on a high margin business, you just tack it on and it's not such a big deal. It's a major deal on a high volume, low margin business like e-commerce. Is there anything to do to lower the rate of that?
So yeah, there's an alternate scheme available from the standard VAT scheme. So obviously the standard scheme, you're charging the 20%, you're collecting that, you're giving that back to the government, and you have the benefit of reclaiming import VAT. That's the standard scheme. There's a flat rate scheme available where you continue to collect the 20% from your customer. However, you remit a lower flat rate back to the government, and that flat rate is variable depending on the sector that you're classified in. So for online retail, it's 7.5%, and you get a 1% discount for the first year of trading. So you get a year of 6.5%. So obviously that's a massive benefit. You can collect the 20% still and remit 6.5% back to the government, and you pocket the difference essentially. Or it leaves you the option to be more competitive with your pricing, because you're obviously paying over 6.5%. You can maybe you don't have to report the whole 20% initially, so it gives you a bit of movement there. But that's the only real option when it comes to lowering VAT as such. The only drawback on that scheme is you can't reclaim the import VAT. So it's a wipe on what would benefit you more.
How much is the import VAT typically?
So import VAT is a standard 20%, and that's based on the cost value of your shipment plus the freight charges, any insurance costs. So that base cost of the shipment getting to the UK, there'll be a 20% charge on that. That's charged to customs immediately, and it's paid immediately. Like I said, under the standard rate scheme, providing that your shipment's cleared through customs under your EORI number correctly, you can reclaim that in its entirety, and it's offset against the VAT due on the sales on the VAT return. So, like I said, with the flat rate scheme, you can't reclaim any of that. So, there's definitely a thought process that must go into it before completely writing off the standard rate scheme.
Right, and
I would also. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
What I was going to say is that it depends also on what kind of products you have. So, for example, if a seller wants to do a lot of shipments of products to the UK, and the products are heavy, and the client believes that there's going to be a significant amount of import VAT that will have to be reclaimed, periodically, then it does make sense to actually register under the standard rate scheme, and we can claim the import VAT so that we can lower down the liability. But if, for example, there are very limited, like small shipments, or throughout the year, and the product is actually light, like for example glass or anything like that, then it does make sense to go under the flat rate scheme. What we recommend is that basically we can have a chat with the seller individually, and we can give a face-to-face approach on what kind of scheme we can have. Of course, also in some other cases, some products fall under they could be zero rated. Let's say the baby products, they are zero rated, so or the books, so there's no 20% there. Or if you are having coffee as well,
Coffee beans, yeah.
Coffee beans, so it's 0%, so you're not supposed to be charging any VAT. But this is for a very small category of products. But the general, like beauty, health and beauty, toys, electronics,
anything like that.
Anything like that is 20%, and it's throughout the UK.
Right, now, HMRC is only in the UK. Does every country in the UK have its own HMRC?
Yeah, each European country has its own respective tax authority. Obviously, they work in the same manner as HMRC, regulate their own country, of course.
Right, but it seems like the UK is cracking down the most.
It's probably because the UK has the most amount of business, the most amount to lose. It's no secret that every seller, more or less, will use the UK as a gateway because it's the strongest market, and it's very easy to ship to the UK as well. Compared to the red tape that you've got to get through for other European countries, the UK is very simplistic. So once your goods are in the UK, you've got the best market to sell through, and then you can even move them on to other markets such as Germany from the UK. So that's why they're cracking down the most, is because they've just got the most to lose and the most to gain.
Right. I mean, but technically, if I can't I send my inventory to like the UK and use that inventory to ship on sales from Italy and France, and am I still VAT liable for those sales?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where the sale is fulfilled from. So, like in your example, if you were shipping your stock to the UK and holding it solely in a UK warehouse, You could then list your products on Amazon, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. And then if a customer, for example, on Amazon Germany, located in Germany, made a purchase from you, and Amazon fulfilled that sale from the UK warehouse straight to the customer, then the VAT is liable in the UK because the supply was made from a UK warehouse. That's the most important thing. If, on the other side of things, if you maybe shipped your goods to the UK and then Amazon transferred the goods from a UK warehouse to a German warehouse for storage, and then a sale was made from a German warehouse, you've got a VAT obligation in Germany. So it's very much where the goods are stored and fulfilled from.
Right, wow. Okay, so we have in the United States currently a discussion now about sales tax, and there's a lot of confusion if an item is in a certain state. If I have nexus, which means I have to pay sales tax as if I have an office in that state. And they're coming up now with some kind of amnesty where all participating states are saying that they're looking back and they're saying what happened happened. Now let's move forward, and as long as you register and you commit, you're going to pay sales tax for that state. Moving forward, you don't have to pay anything backwards. Is there any chance or hope that HMRC will do the same thing?
I would say at the moment there isn't any kind of indication that an amnesty could be granted to sellers, just because there is this regulation since December 12, whereby all sales have to be declared from the first sale that you make in the UK. Because of that, HMRC understands in some cases that there is some difficulty from the seller to make payment, but because there is this liability and because it is not paid, there are no payment plans or any kind of update or legislative law that would say that there is kind of amnesty to be put in place. So my response would be no.
Right, interesting, because they may actually get more money if they do that. But okay, let me ask you this. It's very easy when you're selling in the UK to sell all over Europe. You know that. Do I have to register VAT in each country? Is it a complicated process?
That again depends on your scenario. Like what we just explained with the different warehouses, it's all dependent on where your goods are stored. But I mean, from a general thing like the Pan-EU program, if you were to opt for that, then you're essentially giving Amazon permission to circulate your inventory throughout 7 European countries. And as soon as you do that, you've got a VAT obligation in each one because you're accepting the fact that your goods are going to be stored in 7 different countries. So as soon as you trigger the Pan-EU program, you have a VAT obligation. There's no way around it. So I know there's not much coverage on the Pan-EU program and the VAT element of that given by Amazon. So I know a lot of our sellers have fallen into the trap of having to, they've looked at the Pan-EU program, they thought that looks good. Mm-hmm. They've then they've gone ahead with it, and they've been surprised by the fact they've got to pay VAT in each country. So yeah, if you're storing goods in other EU countries, then you have a VAT obligation there. But I mean, although it sounds complicated, at Avask we offer a very simple solution because we've got partnerships and sort of extended arms in each European country. You can come through one consultant at Avask and just deal with that consultant solely, and they will handle everything in each of the 7 countries. So although it sounds daunting, there's solutions for us.
Right. How long does it take, at least in the UK, to get a VAT number? Because sometimes, I'm sure you've had people panicked. They got suspended on Amazon and they're desperate for a VAT number. They're not going to get back on until they get that number. How long does that typically take?
Normally, officially it takes 14 days but what we have seen is that it takes with us like less than I would say between 7 to 10 days, even sooner than that. Of course, because of the summer holidays, like in July and August, there was a significant backlog, so it would take more than 3 to 4 weeks. But we've seen that everything is back to normal. So I would say once we receive everything and we are satisfied that everything is fine to go ahead, I would say within a week or slightly more than that, the VAT number will be out. And you're gonna, we apply also for the EORI number, which is necessary for each seller to have that number, because otherwise your goods will not be shipped and go through the customs with they won't be allocated against your VAT number, which means that we can claim in that way import VAT and receive certificates on our side. Because when we register a seller, we use our address here, so it means that the seller can also get a registered address which has to be updated on the seller central along with a vehicle number, which is a necessity so that the seller shows that he is compliant and he is ready to go with his sales in the UK and the rest of Europe, of course.
Okay, one last question. What sort of information does HMRC get from an e-commerce platform? Like they just email Amazon and Amazon gives them everything about you, your sales history, or do they figure it out by going through public websites, and do they get the information from there?
If HMRC have an interest in the account specifically due to a compliance check, for example, what they'll tend to do is they probably won't go to Amazon initially. They'll probably try and look at what's available to the public and try and work it out. Maybe looking at reviews and when the reviews date back to try and establish when they were selling in the UK, and then they'll go back to the seller and then ask them and seek a bit of honesty, like we spoke about the prompted and unprompted earlier. But either way, when the seller comes back with an answer, HMRC will probably go back to Amazon and then actually get the facts, and they'll probably ask for sales reports and inventory history to find out when they had goods stored in the UK. So, like I said, Amazon will cooperate, and they'll essentially give them access to anything they need to conduct the investigation.
Wow. Okay, that was incredibly informative, guys, and I really appreciate you coming on. And I don't even know if there's anyone else that does what you do, so I know from our group almost everybody goes to see you and they speak very highly, so thank you. I'm going to put your contact information below if anybody wants to reach you. And that's it. I see you guys you and Melanie at the events, and I'm sure I'll see you more often in the future. So I really appreciate you coming down, and you guys do great work. Thank you so much.
No
Thank
problem.
you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, bye.